Welcome to a new episode in our series Astrologies in Astrology. Today with a very special guest, my first guest from Scotland. Welcome, Kalem Turner.
Thank you so much.
And we start with the copyright. I have only the right to publish the conversation uncut and unedited on freely accessible video platforms, no paywalls, and on my homepages. My guest has the right to shorten, edit, or add to the MP4 file as he wishes, and I will send it to him via the Swiss transfer or wheel transfer. And he has the right to publish it on his websites and video platforms according to his liking. Is that okay with you?
All good, yeah.
Good. Now I have a special site. It's on astrologien.vonabisw.de, and it's this site for our talk today. And I have a surprise for you. You wouldn't believe
Mm-hmm.
it. You said in one of your, let's start with the film list first. In this film list, I learned from your
Oh yeah.
videos, from your videos with other people, that
Yep.
you think there is no book available for Astro-Palmistry. That was your statement.
There are some, but they're more from a Vedic perspective.
No,
And
they are in German. You
oh,
have
okay, you got one in German for me. Yeah, I
not
can't read
not not not
Deutsch, so
not one. The Okay, this is Martin Mack. The first book is about palmistry, that is a little bit with astrology. And the second one is professional palmistry from Manfred Mack, that is a little bit with astrology. But this one is horoscope and
and on
palmistry.
horoscope. Yeah, I actually have a book by the same name. It's
Manf
not in
Manfred,
German, and I think it's actually a different author. It's called
oh,
The
okay,
Hand and the Horoscope. But it's
okay.
not. It's the books that I've encountered that deal with the two subjects. They don't really marry them in the way that I have in mind. They don't really illuminate how the natal chart specifically shows up in the hand, in the different mounts or the lines themselves. A lot of these books they tend to have both topics, and they share the symbolism, but they don't bring them together.
Okay, and
Or
this
if they
this
do,
book
they're not
this
bringing it together in the way that I do.
and this book is exactly what you're looking for, because this is a book about the surrealists in Paris with biographies, horoscopes, and their palms. And
I'm gonna take a picture of that and have a look. I
and
wonder
that
if I could find a translation.
you won't. It's not translated into English, unfortunately. Yeah, I
Maybe I'll
just
have
wanted
to
to
learn German.
surprise you with the German. And I have some interviews. If you can understand a little bit of German, you can watch the Manfred Mack person. Um, he has this video, Handlesen, Surrealist, Astro-Chirologisch. This is one, and then the second one is let me see that. I
I would
have
need it
two.
subtitled because I don't speak a word of German.
Oh,
Not at all.
you don't understand it at all?
Nothing at all, no.
Nothing. Oh, that's too bad. So you have to get a friend who speaks German who translates it to you. You never
Yeah.
know. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't translate from German videos into English. So going back to our page, uh, we covered the film list. Now you have a home page, which is here, and
Hmm.
there people can order a newsletter. You give email readings, in-person readings, and the palmistry course. We come back to all of this later. First, let's dive into your biography. When were you born? And were you born in Edinburgh, where you live today, or were you born somewhere else?
Yeah, I was born in Edinburgh. I live just outside of the city, kind of like in the countryside, so I'm more of like a village kind of person.
Okay.
But
And
I was born in
when was that? In what year?
94, March 19th, 1994. So I'm
So,
31 at
so
the
you're
moment, but
31
I've lived
now.
here all my life.
Okay.
I don't think I'll ever change.
And you went to school, and it's not called high school in Scotland. How is it
It
called in?
is, yeah. We have two schools. We have the primary school for children and then the high school for teenager. You go at about 12, 13. We only have the two
Oh, okay.
schools, yeah.
And then in one of your videos, you mentioned that you went to college. Is that correct?
I've been to a few different colleges, yeah. Initially, I was studying tourism, which
Where was that?
maybe
Where was that? Was that in a Scottish university?
yeah, yeah. It was actually at an agricultural college
Okay.
called Broxburn College, and it's part of SRUC, so it's kind of in with the university. But it was an agricultural college. It was very strange. It was where people would go to learn to become a horse riding instructor. We got free horse riding lessons
Oh,
because that's where people would train to become an equestrian, I guess.
and you did finish that or you didn't finish it?
I did finish it. Yeah, that
So,
was
but
probably
so
when I
what?
was 19.
Just wait,
Late.
wait. Very slow steps. This is very important because in no of your videos is this is all mentioned in detail. So the first college you finished was in a tourism aspect in an agricultural college, and you finished that when you were 19.
I think I was 19. Yeah, yeah.
And then you decided that's not enough education, I need more. Why did you think that?
I hadn't set on one career or one job.
Oh,
I'd already
okay.
had several jobs, and several more after in different kind of industries. So I was
So we have
still
to
figuring it
switch
out.
back. So we have to switch back. What other jobs did you have before college?
My first ever job was on a burger van.
Okay.
For burgers, I was
Yes.
15 years old,
Okay.
and it was a family business back then. But I only did it for 1 year because I was still in school.
Okay. So it was
Um,
part-time in the afternoon, something in the evening.
It was actually like the weekend. Yeah, I would go to
Uh,
school Monday to Friday and then to the burger
Okay.
van on Saturdays.
So one
It's
year
actually
of
pretty good.
burger producing. What's the next job?
The next job, I think, was very brief hairdressing, working in salons. I think I
Okay.
did two different
You're
salons.
hairdressing, you're cutting hair.
Yeah, I never got as far as cutting. I was more like an assistant, so washing,
Yeah, okay, okay.
sweeping, fetching the meals,
Yes,
cleaning,
yes.
handing tools, because you have
Okay.
to learn a bit to cut hair. I don't think I would have been a good hairstylist.
Okay. And after that, next job?
Next job after that, I was working in a supermarket for 2 years. I think it's actually German. Lidl or Lidl? We call
Lidl.
it Lidl.
Lidl is
Yeah,
the German company.
Lidl.
So you
Yeah,
worked with
yeah.
Lidl for a couple of months, and
Two and a
then
half years.
2.5 years, and all the time you went to school in high school.
No, I left school at 15. I left on my 16th birthday. I never went back to school. I didn't enjoy school.
But you could apply for a college degree. So is that possible in Scotland without finishing the high school?
So I went back for my exams, but you have two choices in high school to leave. You can leave in fourth year. When you turn 16, you're allowed with your basic exams, or you can stay for fifth year and then 6 years. 6 years like the highest that you can go with it. But yeah, you can leave as soon as you turn 16. I just never went back after my birthday. I went back to do my exams a couple months later, but I never attended after I turned
So in your
16.
country, it is possible without attending high school, you can take the high school exams.
Well, I did attend high school for 4 years between the ages of 12 up until my 16th birthday. Yeah.
I'm confused. You said you left school and then you went back for the exams. That was later, I
So I
suppose.
stopped attending. You can't like force someone to attend school after the age of 16. And it was like March, my birthday when I left. In May was the exam. So I went back to do the exams.
Oh, okay. So it was a short period where you
Normally,
can,
yeah,
okay.
just go back for the day. Like normally you do eight exams. I was only allowed to do six because I didn't finish the the courses basically. But it was all pretty useless to me.
Okay. But basically, you had the qualification to apply for college studies.
I don't think you needed any qualifications really beyond basic education. I can't really remember. It's not something I was really interested in.
Oh, that's it. That sounds very intriguing. So Scotland has a very different educational system than Germany because in Germany, you have to attend school. You can't be away and then take the exams. You have to be in school and then you take the exam and then you are get a certificate saying this person is qualified to apply for university studies. That is different in your country. So that's a very different educational system.
I'm
Very
probably not the
interesting.
right person to ask about it because it wasn't something that interested me at
Oh,
the time, and I've never I've never had use for it.
You are proof that it's possible. So basically, you have proven that you can study tourism in a agriculture in college, and then you are 19, and then you went to another college to study counseling. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually went to two different schools to study counselling because one was Edinburgh College.
Okay.
I did two different courses with them, but I was also studying holistic therapy, which is massage mixed with counselling. So I was
And
doing
you
both at the same time.
and in one video you mentioned that originally your career plan was to become a massage therapist. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Why didn't that come to fruition? Why didn't you become that?
I actually didn't enjoy it.
Ah, okay.
I think it's good for relaxing, but I need more mental stimulation.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's not something that I want to do, rub people's backs for a living. I enjoy getting massages. I love Thai massage and things like that, but there was no stimulation for me. And I actually didn't even finish the course. It was a 1 year course, and I got to the end. And at the mock exam, I just thought like I'm not gonna do it, you know?
Okay. So you didn't get a college degree in counseling.
I got a two courses I did. I got an introductory certificate, which was three
Oh,
months,
okay.
and then my next course I did module one of what's called a Cosca certificate. I'm not actually super familiar with the terminology,
No,
but
that's okay. No problem.
to get a degree in counseling, you cannot go to college. You have to go to university, but you have
Oh,
to go
okay.
to college first
Yes.
before you go to university,
Okay.
usually.
So then, how old were you when the last course had finished for you?
22? I want to say 22.
22, and that is 5 years later when you had your first tarot card deck. Is that correct? When you were 17,
No,
you got your
17, yeah, yeah.
you got your first tarot card deck when you were 17, right?
Yeah, it was my birthday, my 17th birthday.
And you started with serious research into tarot card when you were 22.
I think I was studying everything at 22. Astrology, I started palmistry, and I was kind of learning how they all blend together.
Now, that's my first question for this divinatory field. You are now a palmist, a tarotist, and an astrologer, and you're looking into crystal balls as well. So you have four techniques in divination. It's very unusual that somebody takes up astrology, tarot, and palmistry, and
I'll actually
add
do more.
you add crystal balls to that. What else do you do in divination fields?
So tea leaf reading is something that I do, but I used to do it professionally, but now I just do it by accident, like for myself, because I drink a lot of herbal tea.
So
So
we have
like yesterday,
that is the fifth qualification, tea leaves reading. Okay.
tea leaves, yeah.
What else divination field do you practice?
Face reading. Face reading, they call it
Face reading. Okay.
physiognomy.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the six. Now we have six. Some people are content with one of those. You have six of them. Another one?
I can do dowsing with a pendulum. It's not my
Oh,
favorite, but I can do it.
well, I do it myself. So I have when I was in the Ministry of Economics in Lower Saxony, I had a pendulum in my desk, and somebody asked me if I have one. I just took it out. It looked like that. Okay, so we have some common experience. So we are seven now. What else do you do?
Um, Trying to think now. It depends what you count as divination. Like dream interpretation would be another thing.
Yeah, it's bordering, but it's okay. Let's take that one as well. So we are
I
eight
think
now.
it can be either or, it can be
Yeah,
more in a
okay.
psychoanalysis type or it can be in a
A divination. Yeah,
divination
yeah, I agree
sort
on
of
that.
type.
So we have eight now. What else?
Used to do runes. I don't actually like runes. I used to do them
So, but you know how to
semi-professionally.
interpret runes. That is nine. Okay, what else?
Um, Trying to think what else. I mean, it kind of depends. There's so many different types of card reading, not just tarot. I'm actually a big fan of Lenormand, and the
Yeah,
Lenormand cards
but
that I use are German.
that is in the tradition of card reading. So do we have the divination fields complete? Nine of them.
Maybe.
Okay, so basically, well, uh, you don't. do all of the nines for clients. For clients, you do tarot, palmistry and astrology, and crystal balls. Is that correct?
Usually, I just do tarot, palmistry, and astrology because those give the
Okay.
most information in a short amount of time.
Okay, good. So let's start with the crystal balls to put that to rest. Why, when, and where did you first get into contact in using crystal balls for divination purposes?
So, when I was 22, when I started to study astrology and palmistry, I was visiting with my auntie, who is my mother's auntie. So, she's great auntie, but I'll just call her auntie. She's 89 years old, and she had told me that she herself had tarot cards and a crystal ball that
Okay.
were her grandmother's. And so she introduced me to crystal reading or crystal gazing, some people call it. There
Are
you go.
those the crystal balls you use?
Sometimes, yeah, I prefer the one that's on the right there, on the silver stand. Yeah, that
This
one.
one,
I
this
think
one.
that one works best. Yeah.
Could you explain what you do with a crystal ball?
So it depends if you are reading for yourself or someone else. Best to have it in your hands rather than on the stand or whatever. So pick it up. And there's different kind of ways you can read it, but I think a lot of people wait for something to appear in the crystal ball, like a kind of Wizard of Oz or like a television starting. It's not really like that. You look into it and it's whatever comes to mind first. It could be a color that you see in the crystal makes you think of something, and then an image reference, and that has a meaning for you. It could be like a feeling that you get, as well as a thought that kind of comes in. You might actually see something physical in the crystal, whether it's like a reflection from your room or something actually appearing. But I feel like crystal ball reading is much different to especially astrology or palmistry because it's not so structured or physical. It is just feeling based and thought intuitive.
How do you explain it? I have here the book of Geoffrey Cornelius, who wrote a book about the moment of astrology, divination in astrology. And it's a thick book about the moment of astrology, what he thinks happens when you do astrological delineation and counseling. Do you have a philosophy? What happens when you do the crystal ball? Do you have a religion background, for example, saying this is coming direct from above, this is the one, and then the world soul, and then the angels, and somehow they give me this impression? Or how do you explain your personal experience, which is a valid experience? You experience it, so it's there, but then you could be agnostic and say, I don't know and I don't want to know, I just love to have the experience. Or did you find a solution for the why? Why does it work?
I think the why applies to like every form of divination. I think it's all the same. I think it's like the universe, a reflection of itself. Whether it be the lines in the hand or the planets in the sky or what you see in the crystal ball, it's a reflection of energy because everything in the physical world is connected to itself. And so it's going to reflect physically in different, often like symbolic ways. But it
That
applies to all forms of divination, not just crystals.
there are two theories in astrology. One is the planets are causation, are causal
Yeah.
factors, and the other is they are signs and they don't cause anything, but they show you the energy fields of the universe of God and the world soul and all that. Your answer sounded like the first theory, like you think there is a physical causation when you use the crystal ball. Would you think that is
I
your
think it's
approach?
I think it's actually in between those. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a reflection. So just think of like a mirror. It is still you outside of yourself. It's a reflection, but it's also not physically you. It's separate. It's a reflection. And I think in divination, in terms of the symbolism, it just spills over into not seeing everything as being so linear or as already happened, but more existing all at the same time. It's hard to describe with words because I think the concepts are bigger than our reality. It's bigger than a physical reality. So explaining it, with our our limited language is a little more challenging. But in terms of astrology, I do think it can be both a reflection and a causation. I don't think those you have to decide one or the other. I think it can be both at the same time.
Do you have a personal religious background?
My religious background is strange. It's different. So like my family, my dad was an agnostic Freemason. So
Okay.
he very much had belief in a higher power, but not fixed to one practice or system or anything like that. Whereas my mother's family is very superstitious, so we believe in it more like fortune telling and spirits, but there isn't so much of like a religious, I suppose it's like a spiritual atheist, if that's not an oxymoron.
How about fairies? Do you believe in fairies?
Yeah, so in Scotland, we call it the fairy faith. And,
Yes.
we do think of it in a modern sense as like energy, rather than like physical beings. It is more the spirit of ideas, you could say. But
Okay.
again, it is what is an idea? Is an idea a real thing or is it an energy? Is energy real? Yes, I would say it is.
Okay. Do you do ritualistic work before you start with the crystal ball? Do you sort of make an evocation of fairies or spirits, or do you just do your crystal ball without any ritual preparation?
Sometimes without, but it's traditional to make a wish on the crystal ball. So to put your hands on it, make a wish, open
Okay.
your hands, and then read the crystal to find out your chances, in terms of what you're hoping for the future.
So there is a little bit of preparation, but it's not an evocation of spirits and fairies to help and support your work in sort of a ritualistic prayer. You don't do that.
I don't think it's one type of spirit. I think for me personally, it's the universe in general. It's
Okay.
connecting to everything that's out there, whether
Okay.
it be a spirit or whether it be the energy around. It's not one specific thing invoked, it's remaining open to all of it. And that's really in the concept of the crystal ball because it's this spherical object. It's not pointed in one direction, it's all directions. It pulls in energy from all directions and it projects energy as well, which is why you can put your intention into the crystal.
Okay. Now that leaves tarot, astrology, and palmistry. I think in your videos you said you started with tarot, diving into tarot first. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You in the videos you showed some cards of the Rider-Waite deck. How about Crowley? Do you use Crowley as well?
I have um I have a Thoth deck. It's quite a large one. It's not my favorite, but do you know what's so strange? I was gifted some cards the other day, and I'm pretty sure it's a German deck in the Crowley tradition. I think it's called the Rohrig Tarot,
Could yeah,
Rohrig.
Röhrig could be, yeah. That's German, a German tarot deck. So you own a tarot deck of Crowley.
For sure, yeah. I've got these right here. Looks very different, but
Yeah,
it's very
that's
much in the Crowley
yeah.
tradition.
It's close to Crowley. That's right. So we
If
have
you look at the two of batons, it says Dominion. It's all the Crowley
yeah.
references.
So we have Crowley and Rider-Waite. Anything else or just these two decks?
I prefer to stick with the right away purely because of the pictures. I feel like
Okay.
people really see themselves
Yeah,
in
I
the
agree.
cards.
Well,
But
some people have 50 tarot decks and use them very
yeah,
differently. So you have two of them and you use
I
mainly
have a
for
collection. I probably have about 50 as well in that
okay,
box.
but you don't use them for client work.
I usually just use the Rider-Waite Smith for client work because it's the friendliest and people kind of see themselves in it.
Okay, I myself had a reading from Dr. Christoph Schubert-Weller, who is a tarot like yourself, and he did a 78 card reading for me. Did you ever do in your tarot practice do the whole thing, all the 78 in a big, large laying and then interpreting all the cards, or did you never do that?
No, but I do that with Lenormand. I do the 36 full Grand Tableau, is what we call it.
So you do a lot of bigger readings.
For tarot, I usually use 12 cards, 12 card spread, and then the Lenormand is the 36 cards, which very much ties in with astrology as well, like
Okay.
36 decans or 12 signs, planets, houses rather.
And how long did it take you when you started, when you were 22 with tarot card learning? How long did it take you to start your first reading with clients for money?
The first money client that I took was 2017. So how old would I have been? Maybe I was 23.
Okay.
And then when I was 24, I started a real business with it.
Was that part-time or full-time?
In the first year, when I was 23, it was part-time, but then at 24, I went full-time. Yeah.
How did you organize your full-time tarot reading? When you did that, was the astrology also integrated in your professional work, or did that come later?
A little bit, a little bit. I think I didn't actually start doing full natal chart readings and transit readings probably until about 2020. I'm probably only 5 years as a professional astrologer,
Okay.
but it was integrated. There was a little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
there still.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
certainly I started with palmistry. It was palmistry and ta tarot card reading was the main thing in the beginning.
Okay. When you started with tarot, did you only read books or did you have a teacher?
My very first tarot deck actually had the words on it, the card itself. So the picture would be here, and then the words up at the top and on the reversal. So I learned from that, which was strange because years later, when I found my auntie had tarot cards, hers were more like playing cards, but they had the playing card, and then the words up top and the words on the bottom. So I got kind of like an idea from that. And after a while, I stopped reading the whole thing. I would just focus in on one word that it was saying, and then it stopped being the word and it started being the picture. And
Okay.
as I learned more about astrology, especially the astrology just popped up in tarot, like the symbolism a lot.
Yeah. Yes,
So
I
it was
agree.
kind of like a natural development with the cards.
So you didn't have a teacher. It was by cards and books.
Yes, I've never had a teacher for tarot.
How about your palmistry? How did you learn palmistry? Did you read English books about palmistry or did you have a teacher?
Both. It was my auntie who introduced me to the first five lines. She only knew the five major lines in the hand, but she explained them, and I thought that's very simple. And then I started reading, and I was like, it's not simple. It's very complicated, actually. But I've
Yes.
probably read hundreds of books on palmistry, always in English, because I don't speak any
Yeah,
other
okay.
languages apart from
So
English and
basically
Scottish.
in palmistry, you did a really dive deep into literature.
Definitely, yeah.
And how about astrology? Now, astrology, this project is called Astrologies in Astrology, and you are one of the astrologers in the project. And you are a very specific astrologer because you combine palmistry, astrology, and tarot cards, whereas Manfred Mack only combines palmistry with astrology. So, how did you learn astrology? Did you have a teacher there? First question.
I took some classes, but I think most of learning astrology was just starting with natal charts and learning by practice. I don't think that astrology is a good one to learn by books. There are some good books on it, but I think it's one that you have to develop your own system and really find out for yourself. But I did a couple of classes in the beginning, more on like Hellenistic astrology.
So, not the psychological astrology.
No, do you know, I think psychology and divination are two separate fields, even though they bleed into each other. Didn't want to be a psychologist, so
Okay.
I stick
So
to
you are a Hellenistic astrologer, would you say that?
yes. Yeah.
What courses did you take?
No courses, just a couple of classes at a shop that I used to work at, like a witchcraft shop. And it just kind of simplified everything for me. I felt like I had all the information already, but it didn't have a structure to it. And then kind of after that, it was just practice. It really was just practicing, starting with natal charts and just offering birth chart readings, and then later progressing to transit readings. But I feel like with astrology, it's good to learn from your own chart first,
Okay.
especially if you're forecasting.
Well, when we are talking about Hellenistic astrology, we are talking about texts basically of the Hellenistic era. But you never read those original texts. Like,
No, so when I say Hellenistic, I mean I operate with the whole sign house system. That's really just the house system that I use.
Oh, so basically, when you say Hellenistic astrology, you just mean the house system, because I use whole sign houses as well. But the Hellenistic astrology is a lot more than just house system. For let's dive deeper into that. Do you use the dignities?
No. I these days I really only focus on forecasting through transits, and I will pay attention to the eclipses. I do use sort of Time Lord techniques, so like annual perfections,
Yeah,
things
but
like that.
this is tradition. If you use Time Lord techniques, you are in the Hellenistic tradition. So let's let's do little steps here. Time Lord, do you use the zodiacal releasing technique?
No, but it has come up recently this week. I think it was Chris Brennan who I was listening to talk about that,
Yeah,
so I'm interested
you
in it.
find it, you find it there. How about perfections? Do you use perfections?
I do use perfections,
So
yes,
basically,
definitely.
you use the time laws of the perfection, which is some people. My interview partner this morning says the most important time lord is the perfectional lord. So that's what you're doing. You're doing perfections, and you combine the perfections with transits. That's,
Yes.
is there another technique which you use besides perfection and transits? For example, do you use solar returns? Or do you do Fidaria or do you do other techniques? Fidaria is Arabic, it's not Hellenistic.
I
Any
do look at returns. I tend not to look at solar returns very much. I was looking at one yesterday. It was a Jupiter return, but I do mix techniques. So I use annual perfections. I do transit readings, and I kind of meld it with your maybe a traditional understanding of the birth chart. When I'm talking with a client, I'm looking at the chart. I'll maybe start with a few natal placements that I think are important for an overall life theme. But then
Okay.
I'm very quickly looking at the transits and seeing what's happening there and any eclipses especially. And I would use Time Lord techniques, especially in annual with annual perfection, yes.
How about Dodecate Moria? In English, it's 12 part. In this tradition, which is a Hellenistic tradition since Manilius and Firmicus Maternus, the 12th part is the sign is divided in 12 parts. So, for example, in my case, I have ascendant 3 degrees 42 in Sagittarius, and the 12th part underlying that is Capricorn. So, do you use the Dodecatemoria in English, the 12 parts technique to
I haven't heard
analyze?
of that before. No,
So
no.
that's totally new for you. Okay. Well,
Yeah, totally.
Manilius and Firmicus Maternus, they say if you don't use it, you do not do astrology because the Dodecatemoria is the most important technique to get a feeling what the person is. So that is something many people do. And it was a tradition in Europe till the 12th century, and then it got lost because of people like Kepler and all those. So basically, you don't use that. I just wanted to know what techniques you're using. So basically, we can say your approach in astrology is perfections and transits,
Mostly, yeah, yeah.
and you have good results with that.
It's certainly the best method of divination for timing events. If you're forecasting, I think it's the
Okay.
most accurate for saying, for example, I had a client, he was a Hungarian guy, came back to me a week ago. He said, I came to see you in spring, and you said I would change jobs in June and that I would work in tech. It's because of the Uranus transit into Gemini kind of moved in June. It was a 10th house transit for him. So of course Uranus changed, Gemini tech, June because we had that little preview. And he wanted to know so much, like, how do you know that? How do you do that? I'm like, it's right here. I showed you last time.
Yes.
So I think transits are the most useful in a fortune telling sense because it's future predictions. You can get some details, which area of life, what's going on, and also the timing. The timing thing is the most important thing in my work.
And you use the outer planets because you were talking about Uranus.
Absolutely.
Did you do this from the beginning, or did you start with the traditional planets and later you put the outer planets to your work, or did you start right away with the outer planets?
I started right away with the outer planets. I never really saw a separation. However, in palmistry, we only use the inner planets,
Yes.
and ancient rulers come into play when you are looking at the comparison with the natal chart. That was an interesting way to understand it. But I always included, because I'm Pisces stellium, like it's a lot of Pisces, and Neptune conjunct the ascendant, and Uranus conjunct the ascendant. I had to do the outer planets as well.
And do you use them as rulers of the houses as well, or don't you use the rulership technique at all?
I do both. However, I will say with Pisces, I think Jupiter does not play as much. I think with Scorpio, Mars and Pluto are both very, very important. I describe it like Scorpio is a water sign, Pluto is the ice, Mars is boiling water. You know, it's got more that fiery
Okay.
compared
Okay.
to the ice, so it's kind of two-sided. With Aquarius, I do see Uranus and Saturn being very important with both. With Pisces, I think there is a Jupiterian element, but for some reason, not as much as Aquarius and Scorpio with their ancient rulers.
So basically, you are very special in that area that you use both for rulership, not one.
Yeah, I think the modern understanding of rulers is more important. You know, if I was to say what if I had to pick the ruler of Aquarius, I would say it's Uranus. It
Okay.
is.
Okay. Okay.
But in palmistry, you learn that the ancient rulers do play a part in the signs, definitely.
Do you do world astrology? So, for example, are you interested in delineating the situation in the skies in the spring, coming up spring, when Uranus comes back into Gemini and Pluto is still in the beginning of Aquarius, and Saturn and Neptune will be in the first degrees of Aries? Do you do this world view astrology, or is that something which we are not interested in?
I'm I like it in a personal sense. It's not something that I would do professionally. I do find it fascinating when people do charts for countries and political events and all that. Professionally, I'm only ever going to be one to one. It's the way I like to work. I like to focus in on one individual. So I find it fascinating in the global sense because it does seem to play a big part. I work it in loosely, but not in a professional sense.
Do you have a personal opinion on what this very important configuration in spring? The Uranus goes back into Gemini in June, in April, I think, and Saturn and Neptune earlier into Aries,
February, I think. Yeah.
Pluto is still in Aquarius. Do you have a personal opinion what this means for the world? This is a trine between Pluto and Uranus, and it's a sextile to the Saturn-Neptune angle. Do you- do do you have an opinion how this will change the world?
I'm never one of these astrologers that think things are fluffy, you know. I always kind of see the worst with the planets. To me, the configuration is like quite destructive actually, especially whenever Pluto's involved, you know. But even Uranus, it's kind of like untamable. Saturn for me is my chart ruler, and it's been like a devastating process to learn about it. So I'm kind of biased in that sense. But to me, it kind of the energy's melding together. It is symbolic of the pressure cooker that we're all living in. I don't necessarily think that they complement each other, but rather exacerbate each other. I think the Pluto ingressing into Aquarius, that's been the most interesting one for me because we are in this age of Aquarius now, right? And everything is kind of tech centered. And Pluto, it seems to be our own destruction. I've always found Pluto transits to be very fascinating, whether it was the Capricorn movement that it made, and it kind of coincided with our economy collapsing. Or when it moved into Scorpio, you know, that was kind of the AIDS crisis, I think, in the 80s. I've always found Pluto to be probably the most dynamic one, and the most interesting for me.
I think the Pluto-Saturn conjunction in 2020 started the virus
Yeah,
problem. Um,
yeah, yeah.
would you would you dare to say what will happen next year with this constellation? More
On a
wars, more
global
breakdowns?
sense,
Yes, on a global sense.
whenever you have like a malefic moving into Aries, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we're already in World War III, but I think Saturn moving into Aries, and again, Pluto being involved, Uranus being involved. It's wars, it's uprisings against government, probably. Again, I'm not like actually
Yeah,
super
okay, okay.
political, but it mirrors things exactly on a global sense, I would say.
If you look at your practice, we have some pictures here. Is that your today room where you do the client reading when he comes personally to you? Is that your room or is that an old
Yeah, it's
room?
my office. Yeah.
That's up to date. That's today.
That
Look,
was, I think, in September, maybe, so a couple months ago.
and you changed it since then.
There are some new items,
Okay.
yes.
And this is up to date as well.
Yeah, there's more on the table. I'm a maximalist, but yeah, it's
Okay.
still there.
And this is in your house?
No, that is I rent an office in a spiritual center. It's called the Arthur Conan Doyle Center. I don't know if you've heard of him. He wrote Sherlock
No.
Holmes.
Yeah, I
He
I
wrote
know.
Sherlock Holmes, but he was a spiritualist and a Freemason, and so the building is in a trust in his honor. It's like a spiritual center.
That's where your office is.
My office is downstairs, so there's a little door just at the bottom of the stairs there that we would
So
go
so
down
this
towards.
picture is of the Arthur Conan Doyle Center.
Yes,
And in that building, in downstairs, you have these rooms.
that's
This one.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Um, how many percentage of your clients come for personal contact with you and you see them personally, and how many are online?
Oh, it's mostly in person, maybe 80% in person, 20% online. The online very much varies. I do email readings online, but in-person readings, I'm there 3 or 4 days a week. So yeah, it's more in person, I would
And
say.
and how many clients per month do you normally see for of these 80%? How many people are
I
that?
would say about 20 to 25 people a week. So I don't know, maybe 190
That's
or 100
100 in a month.
a
That's a
month.
lot of work.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
By the way, in one video you mentioned that the red hair is typical Scottish. Is that your opinion that you are a very Scottish person?
I don't think your hair color makes you more or less of a nationality necessarily, but it's a stereotype, it's a trademark maybe of the country. We actually don't have very many red-headed people in Scotland. It's only 5%,
Oh, okay.
you know?
And and how do you feel about being Scottish? Are you a Joe Connery Scotsman, which is a real Scotsman?
Yeah, so when we refer to real Scotsman, we refer it to if you're wearing something under your kilt or not. You're not supposed to wear any underwear with that.
Okay. Oh,
That's what we mean.
okay. But you would say you are in the fairy belief system. You believe in spiritual areas in the surroundings of yourself, and that is typical for your country, right?
It's typical for the older generation.
Oh, okay.
So like my mum, my aunties, my great auntie, my grandparents, it's typical for them. I actually feel like my generation is forgetting a lot. So we have like a lot of traditions which are rooted in spiritual belief, but now most people don't understand the belief. They just say, oh, it's for good luck, and they don't understand the reason or what kind of tradition that is. They forget it. So I think it's going to survive in people who are interested in the spiritual sense, especially if they lean more towards like the pagan understanding of the universe and all that kind of stuff, and maybe have more interest in the kind of witchcraft that is the history of Scotland. I think that is making a comeback, but the average person, Scotland is actually an atheist country, and we
Oh,
have
okay.
been for some years. It's been majority atheist,
Okay.
but our traditions are more fairy, more folklore. Like our national animal is the unicorn, you know?
Yeah, I know. Um, you were talking about witchcraft. Do you have personal experience with witchcraft in general and with Wicca in as a special branch of witchcraft? Any personal experience with people of that tradition?
Yeah, so I was interested in witchcraft before I was interested in fortune telling, you know.
Okay.
As a child, that was like my special interest. It was like the first books I was reading because my parents weren't prudish in that. They were like very open-minded. Like my favorite books as a child were ghost tales and witchery books and things like that. In Edinburgh, especially, we've got like a quite strong witch community, and I've worked in most of the witch shops in
Did
the
you
last 5 years.
have you been personally in a coven yourself?
No, I've always thought of myself as like an independent
Okay.
person. I actually don't see covens as being super important. They are for
Okay.
some people if they want that sense of community,
Yeah.
but for me, it's a way to connect to spirituality through whatever it is. You know, I'm quite big into herbology as well. I'm not a herbologist or herbalist certified, but that's like a big hobby for me and tradition for us, especially using it in a magical sense.
Do you participate in the seasonal festivities like Samadin, that's probably the 30th of April, and all the other yearly paganistic festivities? Do you participate in those rituals?
Yeah, so I think our biggest one is Samhain, right? It's Halloween. We tend to have big celebrations there. For me, again, I'm usually at home celebrating.
So you're
I'm not
not you're
interested
not
in being out
you're
in the
you're
crowds.
not in the crowds then to do
I
these.
used to be. I used to be, but now it's kind of been overtaken by tourists and spectators rather than people who partake, you know?
Ah, okay. Well, there are
It's
some.
changed after COVID. It changed after COVID. There was this big interest in it, but not from a practitioner perspective, from a entertainment, something
Ah,
fun to do for the tourists and the spectators. So it became too commercialized for me.
are there some secret societies who are excluding the tourists?
Yeah, so there are like the Fire Society, the Beltane Fire Society. They
Yeah.
really run things and they're in charge of the rituals and the performance, but it very much is performance now.
Oh,
Because
okay.
there are hundreds of people who go to attend these things, you know.
You have quite some personal experience with a lot of divination fields. Did you ever have a very special experience where you were the closest to the spirits?
With divination or without?
Whatever. A personal experience in Zen it would be enlightenment. After a long session of sitting, you can be enlightened, or in some other meditation, you get a direct experience with angels or with God. And
My most notable experience with something with spirit definitely wasn't enlightenment, it was more demonic. And
okay,
this was when I was younger, I was probably about 19, and it was actually in a forest. We were exploring, it's called the Camo Estate. It's like an abandoned not a castle exactly, but like an abandoned mansion style castle within a private estate that is just overgrown with forest now. And we used to enjoy exploring abandoned places in the evening, especially, you know, it was like a hot summer evening. And it was a very strange experience. I can't quite think of anything else I've experienced like it before. I'll always remember it. We were walking through the woods and it was just dark, you know, we couldn't see, but it seemed the further we walked, like everything was black. We could not see anything. And it's almost like the air changed from being air to just being darkness. It's a very weird thing. Like you don't feel like you're breathing air anymore. You feel like you're breathing black. Like, it was like this, like there was nothing you could see. And we kept walking and we're holding hands so we don't get lost, me and my friend Sarah. And generally, it just starts to feel intense. You know, it's hard to describe because it really was a feeling at first. And the more we walk, the more intense the feeling. And, you know, we're kind of holding each other a little bit tighter. And when we get to probably like the middle of the woods, a sound comes towards us and moves through us. It wasn't like a sound like, oh, I can hear that's over there. It was like a moving sound, and it moved from in front of us through our bodies and stopped us to where we could not walk anymore. The only way I can describe the sound was like a demonic horse. That's the only way I can describe. How do you know what a demonic horse sounds like? It sounds like a horse that isn't alive in a really creepy, mad way. I think we were sort of stood there for a couple of minutes because it vibrated not just through us, but through all the trees. It really did move in like one direction, but it moved through everything. And after I think maybe like a minute or two, I managed to start moving my legs and I turned and my arm, I just kind of grabbed her and started walking backwards and moving her, and we ran all the way home and we
Okay.
didn't really talk about it that night. She's sadly passed away now. She passed away in 2020, but that was probably like the most physical manifestation of something otherworldly. And it was nightmarish. I mean, it's hard to describe now, but yeah, something I would probably never forget. I don't recommend going to that place in the evening. It's called Camel Estate. During the day, I think it's nice.
Okay.
But yeah, very spooky.
This experience didn't trigger you to study black magic and how to defend against it.
I was already interested as a child, so it didn't change anything. It more just was like a notable event.
When you say you were interested, did you read Picatrix or other grimoires, Abramelin or something like that?
No, I was never into the what I would call ritualistic grimoires or
Okay,
ceremonial magic. For me, because it's a part of like my culture as well, it is more the folk magic that I'm
okay.
interested in.
Did you have a mentor in magic?
No, I don't think
No,
so.
no.
No.
Just personal experience and interest in working in the witchcraft circles and all that. Okay, now come back to your practice. Basically, you are combining in this room, astrology is here, the crystal balls are here, and then you have tarot and palmistry. Um, when a client comes to you, do you use tarot cards and palmistry and astrology always together to do the advising the client, or does that differ? Is sometimes only astrology in the focus, sometimes you do only tarot cards, sometimes you do only palmistry. How is your practical work organized when a client comes to, and how do you decide what to use?
For most people, sometimes the client will say, like, I really want to focus more on astrology, especially if they know their chart a little bit, they're learning, they want someone to understand because it takes longer. Reading charts just takes longer. Normally, I start with the palm reading because you can do it very quickly. You can do it in 5, 10 minutes and get through most of the lines. And it's a very good way to get to know the person because it's their hands. So it's things about them. And it kind of gives you an overall palmistry I compare to astrology and that it's like a natal chart reading, but read in a transit manner because it has timing, it has ages on it, but it's more life overall. So instead of saying like the transit Saturn and moving in February, you would say, oh, I can see a difficult time around whenever it is, like age 34, 35, wherever it is in the palm for this area of life. So I start with the palm reading and then move on to the chart. And I'm a bit fluidic. For some people, I'll focus more on the transits. For some people, more on natal placements. It kind of depends how interesting their chart is, right?
Okay.
Like which parts are more interesting. And then I would finish with the cards. At the end, if someone has a question, I would answer at the end.
And how about the tarot cards? How do they come into the picture?
So with tarot cards, I usually just shuffle. I shuffle, and I ask my client to tell me, say stop, whenever you like. And then I'll lay out 12 cards, three, 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 and read them upwards.
And do you do this always with all clients or just seldom?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah.
So your practice
A
is
lot of the
with,
time, actually, for cards, I prefer to use Lenormand because I just think there's more information there because you use more cards, right? I do the Grand Tableau, so
yeah.
it totally kind of depends on what the client wants, kind of what their intention is. But a lot of the time, I'm using Lenormand.
So I'll show you a nativity. Let me see where that is. I did this with Dr. Gustav Adolf Schöner, and if you see this sort of chart,
Hmm.
how would you approach a chart like that?
So I would probably start on the left because we've got a lot going on. Again, it would totally depend on the client and kind of what comes up in the palm reading usually, because it usually segues into like an area that they would be interested in, you know?
Okay. And if there is no special questions from the client, how would you approach it?
Usually then that I would just start reading the transits, and I usually start with the outer planets. So I'd usually just say, let's start with Uranus, let's start with Neptune, see where they're going, because they tend to bring the most chaos. And I feel like it's better to end on a positive note. So like I'll finish with Jupiter,
Uh,
unless
so
they're Capricorn rising, then
so
I don't think Jupiter is good
basically
for
in
that.
this chart you would go by the Pluto here, which is a transit, and the red
Hmm.
ones are so you would basically approach a chart like this via the transits, right?
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Any impression what a spontaneous answer to this chart?
So something that kind of sticks out to me immediately. So it would be a Jupiter chart ruler, with the Sagittarius ascendant there, and Jupiter is moving into the ninth house, with that one next year. So I
Yes.
would see that being like a really important one for that person, not just because it's a chart ruler, but also because the ninth house, Jupiter is naturally at home there.
And
So I think that's going to be a really positive experience. Maybe
what
they're
would
going to travel the world or take up
no,
higher education.
wait a minute. I'm 76. I'm not traveling the world next year. Uh, if you have a client with 76 years old and you have Jupiter entering the ninth house, what could you possibly say in my age to this transit?
So you might not want to travel, but there's several things with the ninth house, and don't feel like you can't travel because recently I had a client who was 81 years old and traveling the world on her own. She was
Oh,
from America. This was her first time coming to the UK, and she was touring the UK. She was 81 and traveling. So people do it. It depends on the person. If it's a ninth house transit without any travel, then I would say teaching, probably a good thing. Teaching, but also studying. I think you have to do both when
studying
you're,
might in my case it will be studying because
yeah.
we can close the discussion here. I will be changing my work because I will finish with the interviews and the internet and YouTube next month. You are one of the last people. There are three after you, and then this whole project will end, and then I will start studying. So you're very correct. Jupiter in nine means in my case studying a lot of studies.
The other kind of part of it with Jupiter, if you're into the more philosophical or philosophical is a good word for the ninth house, but like psychological part of chart reading, even with transits, the ninth house being our sort of world view, Jupiter being the largest planet, it's expanding everything it moves through. It would be like your world view expanding, even if you're not traveling it necessarily. Which I always say readings can be things we expect or
Yeah,
things that are a
yeah.
surprise, definitely. But usually that comes with like changes or expansion in someone's political beliefs or spiritual beliefs. They're
Okay.
expanding on it, it's growing even further. Because it touches, several different areas with the houses, but I tend to think the houses have their two main themes.
Yeah,
And with
okay.
the ninth house, it's always travel or education. I was saying this to someone, a lady the other day there, she had her midheaven in the ninth house right in the middle. And I said, so do you work in education? And she said, well, yeah, I am a primary school teacher, elementary school, but I want to change. I want to work in, I think she said like criminal justice or something like that, which kind of mirrored the Saturn moving into Aries. That was her 10th house. So I said, well, yeah, that could be, Saturn and Aries, criminal justice. It's not a bad change. But yeah, ninth house is always education or travel.
So basically, when we look at your homepage, um, there are all your palmistry books you have read,
Some.
and your wonderful. This is a wonderful working place. The energy is, to me, looks beautiful. Did you check the place for energy flows?
So when I first attend a room, whenever I'm looking for like a new place to work, I tend to check the corners because I think the corners, this is like good in a spiritual sense, but also for like physical, if you're checking out a property, right? Because I'm a landlord, I'm a residential landlord, I have a small property business. Go to the corners because it's where you're going to see damp, it's where you're going to see darkness, it's where you're going to smell anything that's off. And I do believe that, even though that's a physical problem, I also think that's like an energetic manifestation. If the energy is not right in a room, something's physically going to go wrong, whether it's the structure of the roof or damp in the corner or something underneath the carpet. So I really, I check like the corners is where I go.
Okay. How far do you go in the category of ghosts of buildings? Do they exist?
The In my building, there's like a heavy ghost presence, and people have actually written books on it. That staircase that you saw earlier, there's a book, I can't remember what their name is, but it was written by a psychic medium, and they called it The Vortex. At the top of that stairs, there's a beautiful skylight, and it's got beautiful architecture, kind of cosmic and angel themed. So it's a very spiritual building. It was built, I think, in 1880, so we're coming up 1.5 centuries now. But the ground that it's built on, is the heart of Edinburgh. It's been populated for so, so long. Edinburgh is Ghost City. It really is.
So what do you do about ghosts if you have them in your building? Do you do a
Make
ritual?
friends.
What?
Make friends. Be friendly.
So you don't get rid of them.
No, definitely not. No, not my job to get rid of them.
Do you?
Especially if they're not being a bother, I think most ghosts are just again kind of like a reflection, maybe
Okay.
a residual energy.
Okay. Do you have personal experience with other buildings where ghosts were haunting the people living in the house?
I've had a lot of clients come to me for that reason. They're looking for like a ghost buster. I
Yeah, but
usually
but you are
send
not. You are not a ghostbuster. You say to
exactly,
them,
yeah, but
become friends with them.
I mean, that's good advice, become friends.
How do how do
Or
you how do you do that? How do you become a friend with a ghost? Do you offer something for him, or what? What's the strategy, the technique to become friends with the ghost of the house?
I think there are things which ghosts like and things which ghosts do not like,
Okay.
particularly like with herbs. So, for example, a lot of people, when they move into a place, they say, "Oh, I'm going to burn sage." But that's a terrible idea because it gets rid of all the energy that was there before that's imprinted on it. And you don't really want a place to be bare of energy, especially if you're working in a spiritual field. You want it to be saturated with the positive kind of energy. So you can burn other things that they like. They really enjoy sweet kind of incense. Mugwort is a big herb to burn, especially in Scotland. It's very traditional for us when we do spiritual work. It's called seining. So not smudging, it's seining. Different word, different practice. Mugwort's really great for bringing it in. I actually think crystals work really well.
Okay.
Crystals work well for being around spirit. Amethyst, labradorite, clear quartz, angel quartz is a big one.
How many clients come to you for advice in the category of becoming friends with ghosts?
Not many.
Not many.
Not many.
How
Most
many how many
people
would you guess you had the last 10 years?
in the category of ghosts.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't
two,
counted.
two, two, 3, or 20.
More, yeah, probably more than 20. I mean,
Oh,
you have to
it's quite a
think
num it's quite a number then. It's quite a number.
over the course of my career, I've probably seen more than 10,000 people. So the topic of ghosts has come up more than a few times.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's not what people usually come to me. They usually come to me for future predictions because that's my like speciality.
How about alchemy? Did you ever dabble into alchemy?
Not really, no. I find the history of it fascinating, especially when it was all kind of in one. So if you were an astrologer, you were a doctor. If you were a doctor, you were an alchemist. If you were one of these things, you were also a mathematician and a philosopher and a writer and a
Like
teacher.
like Paracelsus, for example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I find that fascinating, but it does seem to be divided now. People kind of like what you were saying earlier, like astrologers tend to be astrologers. or they do palmistry as well. They don't have a toolkit of different divination
Well, they
systems.
certainly don't have 9 methods like you have. Definitely
Usually
not.
don't use the nine methods though, you know.
But you
Usually just
could,
stick to the
you
big
could,
three.
oh, but you could if you wanted. So if you wanted in the moment, you could throw the runes and add them to the process.
There are some, I actually prefer runes as talismans now. So like
Oh,
I would
okay.
use them usually as charms. But in terms of divination, there are divination that I like to do for other people and divination that I like to do for myself. For
Okay.
example, the tea leaf thing. Tea leaf's quite annoying to do, you know, it's quite messy. But I do it for myself because I drink a lot of tea and it's hard to ignore. So
Okay. Alchemy. There is Agrippa Cornelius of Nettesheim. Did you ever go into his books? There's an English translation of the Occulta Philosophica.
say his name.
Agrippa von Nettesheim, Agrippa Cornelius of Nettesheim, and there is an English translation of the occult for philosophy. And he. Some people say he was a magician, and some people he just wrote things about magic. How is your position if you don't know Nettesheim? That's not important. How is your personal position? Do you believe that real magic existed or still exists today, or do you think it's more stories and real magic was never in the human hands?
I think it depends on what your understanding of real magic is. You know, are we talking about real magic like here's my hand, let me pyromance, pyrokinesis, fire into my hand, the kind of things you see in Hollywood films?
No,
I
no,
don't think
no,
that's real magic.
I'm talking about, for example, Indian guys. Sai Baba hold his hand and ashes was coming down. Real ash, a real material. Material was things materialized because of his will. In India, I have somebody who was there. That was Christoph Schubert-Weller. He was there. He saw it. Now you can say it was imagination. He was in trance. He didn't see the real thing. What's your opinion? Is this something which exists today that people can materialize things out of nothing and in alchemy transform lead into gold, or do you think it's only stories?
I think the lead into gold thing, which is really the traditional understanding of alchemy, I think that is definitely possible, and I actually think we'll
Oh,
get there in the
wait,
future.
wait a minute, wait a minute. You just said you think it's definitely possible that this happened and it might happen in the future. So
Right.
basically, we are on the same side here because I believe in some stories that people were in the old days, in the Renaissance time. For there is some documents demonstrating that people could do this. So we are on the same page that there is something which we can't explain. Well, we humans can't explain how to transform lead into gold without going through the process. And only people who went through the process and reached the goal that they were able to do things like that, then they can understand it, and then they don't talk about it. Is that your position?
Yeah. Kind of, yeah, yeah, I would say so, definitely.
Okay. So did I miss to ask something important from your life and your practice, or did we cover what you're doing sufficiently in your opinion?
Hmm. Um,
Do you want to
you
add
know, my big
something?
focus for the future is teaching. I did an online course recently with Harvard University because I thought
Yes, yes.
that's a that
Good to mention. I wanted to ask you about that. That's good that you mentioned that. Okay, let's
it was
make
a
this.
good course, but I was disappointed at the same time, you know.
Well, it was Harvard University, and I have it here somewhere. Palmistry, Astro Talk, the Witch Palm Conversation, quote. You did Harvard prediction. You did this.
Omens, oracles, and prophecies. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And it's not an academic degree. You get a certificate if you can answer some questions which are very easy to answer. What did they teach you? What was the content of the curriculum?
The content was very mixed. It featured a lot on ancient haruspicy techniques, Chinese bone burning, tasseography again, the concept of casting lots, especially Christian divination and bibliomancy. It also included things like tarot and astrology in the modern sense. Also, Turkish coffee reading, which I think is a fun alternative to tea leaf reading. But I was kind of annoyed, it is just a short course, it's an online learning initiative.
Yes.
But I was annoyed at some of the people who were featured on it. For example, the young man that they featured, I think he's a professor of physics, but happens to, I forget his name. He was a professor of physics, I'm sure, but reads tarot as a hobby. And he was explaining, he was seen as the expert on tarot, and he was explaining you don't do tarot readings without first asking a question. You want to find out some information about your client first. And I just thought, yeah, if you're not very good at the job, or if you're a scammer, if you want to fish for information in a question because you're incapable of giving predictions without a question, then you're probably not the expert to be interviewing on this subject. And it was echoed a little bit in the guy who was talking about coffee reading. He said, I grew up in Istanbul, and there are cafes where you get trained to read coffee grounds and talk to the tourists and really entertain them. And he said, part of that training is to ask the right questions so that you can get information out of your client and then feed it back to them in the reading. And I just said, like, that's a scam. That is a scam. You're not the people who should be being interviewed. And it was so ironic because they did a coffee cup reading in there. Uh, and you could see clear as day the coffee. It was a picture of the Eiffel Tower made with the coffee. And the woman they were reading for said, that's true. I am going there. I've been before and I'm going again. I love the Eiffel Tower. So it's like, the divination system works. Why are you insisting that there has to be this fraudulent obtaining information of your client to sell it back to them? And I found that the Professor Alyssa Goodman, she's the head of applied astronomy at Harvard. She came at most of these systems, especially the ancient ones, with a very good attitude, but looked at the more modern systems and very much, it was seen as very much of not putting it all in the light of being a scam, but saying there's always an element of that. And I just thought that was wrong. I just thought like
Yeah.
you've just chosen the wrong experts. They had an astrologer as well. Speaking of ninth house placements, so she was asked her to read her natal chart, and it was ninth house placements. I think ninth house, Libra, Sun, Stellium, all that. And even just the Stellium in the ninth house, she could have said things like, you're going to travel the world, you're going to work in education, you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be very politically astute. She didn't say any of that. She just kind of said, oh, maybe you have an interest in religion, and you might be going on a journey, but it's maybe not a physical journey. It was just all kind of talking around it. So whilst the course I thought was brilliant, I thought you're not interviewing real divination practitioners, you're not interviewing real fortune tellers, you're kind of doing these people who pussyfoot around the topic. And I've only learned one system and not necessarily in an honest way. So it was an interesting course. There's no degree in divination, as far as I know. There's no degree in tarot or fortune telling or anything like that.
Well,
But I think there should be.
there is a degree in astrology. You can go to Lampeter, Wales, Trinity St. David, and can get a Master of Arts in Cultural Astronomy and Astrology. So there is one academic
Again, I think
degree.
that's more from like a cross-cultural conversation perspective, maybe the history, rather than an actual practice. You know what I mean?
You can do research in practice as well. For example, Helena Avellard got a PhD in Warburg Institute, and she was analyzing the practice of S. Bell from 1499 in France. So there is some academic approach to do to research on the practice of astrology, but it's not often. Luis Ribeiro from Lisbon, his PhD is about the practice of astrological teaching by the Jesuits in the Renaissance. So some and the doc PhD dissertation of Robert Hand is about the practice of Bonatti in the courts of the 13th century. So there is some material available for research in the practice of astrology, but I don't think there is anything going on tarot reading. There is a little bit of palmistry, not that much there in German. There's some books on which you could call research books, but that's about all. But coming back to Harvard, that's easy to explain. They don't dare to employ real people, real divination people, because they are cowards that these people could convince people about these methods. Because if you would go there and they would interview you, their reputation would not be good in the scientific era, and Harvard is a
I
university.
think the trouble was they were giving the position to people who had qualifications in scientific fields. So the tarot guy, he was also a professor of physics, but he
Yes,
wasn't very good at tarot, you know. Having a doctorate in a different field is not going to make you an expert on one of these subjects. Only experience will.
yes.
Only a review page with that kind of feedback will, you know.
I think you could find people with an academic background who are good in tarot. Some
You
people
could.
have degrees, but Harvard would never dare to take those people on their program because then their program would be serious about it.
Right.
And this, what you did is to tell people, don't believe it, it's scam. That's the basic
I don't
line.
I don't think that was the overall message. I think there was an inference of it at some places throughout. I think what they were looking at was really the history and
Oh,
understanding it
okay.
from
Okay.
the psychological perspective, kind of like an anthropology perspective on divination. That was
Yeah,
the
but
kind of premise of the whole
there's a
thing.
problem there. In astrology, this has been the topic of conferences. Geoffrey Cornelius in 2003 in the Bar Spa conference of the Sophia Center, he said if an historian of astrology, a researcher, an academic researcher in the history of astrology, researches the history of astrology and doesn't know how to delineate his chart, no, it's a no-go. You
Yeah, yeah,
if you want to research a field, you have to know the field before you research its history. And
right,
that's the problem these Harvard people have because they don't know the craft.
right. You have someone who's talking about bibliomancy from 2000 years ago that's never practiced bibliomancy,
It's
you know?
not going to work. No, it's not going to work. Okay, did we miss something important or did we cover what we wanted to do?
I think we covered a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so you're content with what we were doing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks to Calem Turner in Edinburgh in
Thanks for having me.
Scotland. And thanks from the viewers and from myself. And I stop the talk. Danke fürs Vorbeischauen und auf bald. Und I stop the recording.